We'd like to welcome everybody here tonight to our Planning Commission. And we'd like to start it off. We're going to shake it up just a little bit tonight. We're going to ask Eldon Gibb to give our invocation. Then we're going to have he can either sing the national anthem or lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Dick Saunders. Eldon.
Our dear kind Father in heaven, we come before thee tonight to make decisions that will benefit the city and community members. And we ask that we can make those decisions that will not only benefit us in the near future, but looking outward to the future many years to come. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Would you please stand and face the flag? Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We appreciate your participation and attendance. We'll start with approval of our agenda for this evening. I look for a motion to approve our agenda.
This is Commissioner Musso. I make the motion that we approve the agenda for this evening.
This is Commissioner Bullock. I'll second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda has been approved. We're going to go on to our approval of the minutes from November 3rd. If you've had a chance to review those and look for a motion to approve those.
This is Commissioner Bullock. I make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 3rd meeting.
This is Commissioner Tupou. I second that.
First and the second's been provided. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving forward to item number 3. Is there any declaration of abstentions or conflicts of tonight's meeting from anybody? Good to go. Number 4 item on our list is approval for the 2022 Planning Commission meeting and cutoff dates. That was in our packet. Do we do a motion to approve those? So I'm looking for a motion to approve those dates. If there's any questions or comments to those, please
Maybe
provide them.
before the motion, Drew, just because we've got Commissioner Tupou doing this for the first time, do you want to just give a little rundown of kind of our methodology there? Yeah, on the dates.
Yeah, generally we take, of course, the first and third Wednesday always is the meeting, and then the cutoff date is generally that time to turn in your application for all review, noticing, all those things that have to take place before. So it generally is about 4 weeks in front of, 3.5 is what it ends up being on that. So, and those are just the times that they have to have their completed application in to be on that agenda night of the Planning Commission meeting. So, yeah, for anybody else viewing that, that's kind of what this date lineup is all about, is getting completed applications in to meet the deadline for that meeting. So,
Okay, thank you.
anybody else have any? You probably had any questions from anybody as it relates to this? Again, we try to catch in case there's holidays on there and not do meetings every once in a while. One slips through, but most time we go through and check to make sure it's not a holiday on that Wednesday, and then we'll just usually not have that meeting on that night. So
And this schedule's consistent with prior year's practice, so no change proposed.
Yeah, and I think it's great that we have it so we can have it in our calendar and we can calendar around that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
look for a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Bullock. I make a motion we approve item 4A.
This is Commissioner Tupou, I second that.
Have a first by Commissioner Bullock, a second by Commissioner Tupou. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, onward and upward. We'll go to item number 5A, which is consideration and recommendation to the City Council for roadway dedication for Bluff View Drive between 1100 East and Washington Parkway. Applicant is Dean Terry. We'll turn the time over to our city engineer, right? Or
No, new development project
Public
manager.
Works.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, good evening, Commissioners. John Hinkey, new development project manager. The applicant's requesting approval of the road dedication between 1100 East and Washington Parkway. This establishes a 60-foot right-of-way between 1100 and Washington Parkway. Right-of-way width matches the existing portion of Bluffview to the east and will connect with Washington Parkway. Public Works Department's reviewed this. We approved the design. We recommend the Planning Commission for approval of the roadway dedication plat based on the following findings, subject to the following conditions of all the improvements be installed or bonded prior to recording of the dedication of the plat. Any questions that I may answer for you?
Any questions by commissioners? Great. Well, if there's no questions or comments, I look for a motion.
This is Commissioner Tupou, I'd like to make a motion to approve the roadway dedication plat with the one condition in the staff report.
Pass it on to City Council.
Does it say to pass it on to City Council?
Yes. Yes, on the City
Yes,
Council.
okay, and pass it on to City Council for approval.
This is Commissioner Musso, I second that motion.
So I have a first by Commissioner Tupou, a second by Commissioner Musso. Individual voting, Tupou,
Aye.
Bullock,
Aye.
Musso,
Aye.
and I'm Sheila, also an aye. Item 5A, the road dedication will go to the City Council for approval. Item number 6A is a consideration to approve a conceptual plan for the Bella Vista Triangle minor subdivision located at approximately 325 East, Buena Vista Boulevard. Applicant is Washington City. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Eldon Gibb.
Just to note, Commissioners, this is not a conceptual approval. It was thought that it was only going to be a 2-lot subdivision, but it's 4 lots. And that's just because the city's taking out all the pieces they do not want to sell, but they still are in essence a lot. So it's a 4-lot. So it's not a conceptual approval. You will be voting on this to move on to City Council as a minor subdivision. It was just mislabeled in the agenda, just to make note. Go ahead, Eldon.
As stated, the applicant is proposing to split the present 8.85 acres into 4 parcels, with parcel 1 consisting of 8.38 acres, parcel 2 being 0.08 acres, parcel 3 will be 0.22 acres, and parcel 4 will be 0.17 acres. Washington City will maintain ownership of parcels numbers 2, 3, and 4, and Washington City will be looking to sell the larger parcel number 1. The proposed minor subdivision is currently zoned C2. The surrounding zoning includes R3 and the recently approved Bear River storage to the east, with open space to the south and PUD and residential 6,000 square foot minimum to the west. Staff has reviewed the requested proposal, and the proposed Bueno Vista Triangle minor subdivision conforms to the standards as set forth in the zoning regulations and subdivision ordinance of the city. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council for the Bueno Vista Triangle minor subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions as seen in your report. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Drew, can you give us an aerial view of that?
So the sign, is that on the property you're selling, or is that on one of the property you're keeping?
It's the east side of the parcel. Yeah, and then there's a small building off of Graham Manor, which is one of the parcels we'll keep, and then another.
So the billboard would be on parcel number 4.
Okay.
You see the shadow there up in the far right corner?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is the parcel then adjacent to that also zone C2? Is that all where you just had your pointer?
No, this show you.
Okay. Okay, so it's all,
So everything's C2, yeah, which is all our property, the C2 stuff right here.
it's all the city's property?
Yeah, both these pieces are ours, and we're just breaking it down into this minor subdivision.
Kept a secret from us, didn't you?
Well, this piece had, and you know, it's for those who have been here a while. There was an old AM radio antenna about where my cursor is. I think it's down now. We had them finally take it down, but the contract expired a couple years ago. Even though I don't think it was used for years and years, but the contract was still in place. And so after that happened, now right now, from what I understand, it's not going to go on the market right away. City Council hasn't determined. We just wanted to get it ready, take out that pump. That's what the, you know, let me take the zoning off. And there's just that one little on your, you know, your plat, you see where my arrow is. That's a pump for a well. And then down here in this, that one weird kind of curved shaped parcel that's being taken out is a natural spring that the city wants to maintain in ownership of, because that actually feeds into our irrigation lines. And then, of course, we're not going to give up the billboard. That pays for your guys' wages. That, no, I'm just kidding. But billboards, you once you have them, you don't want to let them go if you don't, you know. It's wise to always hold on to them.
So is the parcel that whole triangle, or just the?
It's actually the two pieces is city owned. So we're
So
just
that
going to
line-
break it up into a four lot minor sub. You know, yeah, I said I could have come back and done, well, I couldn't have done a 2-lot because the property on the west would have ended up with 3 pieces. So we're just taking the whole piece, redefining it, you know, with a legal description, taking those out just for future. We're done. We don't need to worry about it at a future date.
So the Bear River storage will go around that well then, or that spring?
Bear River's down.
Oh, they're
You can barely
down.
see it.
Yeah, they're down on the other.
That's the one you approved last week.
Was
I'm trying to
thinking it was
get,
that
it's
same
over here.
property.
Here, I'll
We've
kind
got-
of drag it for you.
Okay.
Got 2 triangle
gotcha.
shaped pieces.
Yeah, this is the Bear River one down here.
I was
And
confused.
the
I'm sorry.
moving of the
Yeah.
billboard. Our billboards, we don't have to move it. Again, we're making that piece, you know, just kind of go straight down and make a smaller triangle up there and maintain that.
Yeah, makes sense. Any other questions or comments regarding this?
No, it's pretty good slope on that ground, isn't there?
Yes, it is.
So from a commercial value standpoint, it's like either going to have to cut it down or.
It'll be
do
retaining walls.
something.
They're going to be doing, I imagine you'll see retaining walls. We almost had this sold to the LDS Church for a stake center about 5 or 7 years ago.
No way.
And they went, and they were actually okay with the beginning, but then they started getting some costs back about the retaining of what they really were going to max out the property best. and they walked away from it, and I don't blame them.
Let's see, put the temple there. Okay. I don't have anything.
Looks like we're looking for a motion.
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Tupou. I'd like to make a motion to approve the preliminary plat approval for Buena Vista Triangle Minor Subdivision located at approximately 325 East Buena Vista Boulevard with the 2 findings and the 2 conditions, and recommend approval with those conditions and findings to the City Council.
Commissioner Musso, I second that.
Great. I have a motion by Commissioner Tupou, a second by Commissioner Musso. Individual voting. Tupou,
Aye.
Bullock,
Aye.
Musso,
Aye.
and I'm Schill, and I'm an aye also. We will approve and pass on to the City Council item number 6A. Okay, on to item number 7A, which is a public hearing. And 7A is a public hearing to consider approval of a conditional use permit C-21-13, request to hold events and meetings in a commercial building located at approximately 568 West Telegraph number 4. Applicant is Ed Tracy, and we will turn the time over to Drew for some comments.
Thank you. As stated, the applicant's request an approval for an expansion and revision of a current approved conditional use permit for the shops at Telegraph Square. Again, this property is zoned C2, which is service commercial. The applicant's wishing to lease one of the commercial units within the existing development. The request for the particular conditional use permit is to seek approval to use the unit for the office space and for special events from time to time. The office space use is permitted use within that zoning district. The special events request is for the reason for the CUP requirement tonight. Staff has concerns directly related to the possible volume of people that would be gathered at the location at a given time. Staff has requested that the applicant be attentive and respectful to the existing renters and leasers within the other units at this development. With that in mind, staff has recommended that the special event uses be held at times when the other existing businesses may not be open, thus allowing for shared use of the parking stalls. So you'll have a day use for the pharmacy and the other things that may go in there that mostly are daytime hours, and then the special events can be at night when other things are closed, opening up so then you can split those parking stalls, kind of an AM, PM type of a use. So that's kind of the philosophy behind what we're trying to do. So in other words, most of the other existing businesses are closed for the evening, then the special event activities would be allowed to operate, not causing an overload on the limited parking spaces that are there. Staff's reviewed the request and the zoning regulations as outlined and has determined that the request for a revised conditional use permit allowing for shared parking stalls used for daytime business operations of existing businesses and also nighttime special event operations at this location would be in conformance to the zoning regulations. Therefore, staff would like to recommend the Planning Commission approve C-21-13, allowing for an expansion/revision of the current, and it shouldn't be Walmart Gardens, I apologize for that, it should be the shops at Telegraph Square for this particular use to go on these events in the evening. So I was hoping we'd have discussion about this. This is a unique kind of request, but in my commercial, it allows for the Planning Commission, if they feel the intent is met, that they can grant conditional use permits for different items that may not be listed as permitted or conditional uses. And that's kind of the thing we're hitting tonight, is if the planning commission feels that the intent is still met by doing this, that you could consider this particular application. So feel free to ask any questions. Again, there is no wrong question from me because this is unique.
Can you back off just a little bit on that so I can get, no, on the screen. Yeah, just Drew,
So
back off. Just,
Sorry,
we're gonna
Brian, I didn't
approve it. Just
feel like. Yeah,
chill
okay.
out.
Is that enough, or you want to go one more?
I'm just trying to get my bearings as to where it's
Behind the
at.
Discount Tire and the Sonic.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I thought. So
There's the Thai, the Royal
Royal Thai's in
Royal Thai
there.
restaurant in there.
okay, and there's a
Um,
vacant space in that building right now.
Basically, lot 5 right in the middle is going to become vacant.
Okay,
And the other side, is that the pharmacy?
The pharmacy's in unit 3, I think.
Okay.
2 and 3 maybe. I don't know. They might take up 2, and then trying to remember what else is in there, but yeah, the nail salon is also, that's right, is in 5 or 6. Number 5. Is that Korean restaurant still open on the far right? Okay. Well, we'll have, let's ask the applicants so that, because you may want to hear what they are and
So let's open this up to public comments and we'll invite Ed Tracy up to give us his comments. So go ahead and take the mic, state your name.
Good afternoon, Ed Tracy. So it's, if you look at that long space, it's the building right in the middle. It's space number 5. It used to be Elite Healthcare, which was a group of doctors that did physical therapy. Before that, it was the Beauty College. And it's approximately 6,000 square feet. There's enough office space in there. The plan is to bring the Chamber of Commerce over there. Washington City Arts Council is considering taking one of the spaces. Arts Incorporated, which does work with the schools, and maybe one other. And then the space in the middle, all that gray space, which is about 2,200 square feet, is completely open for events where we'd like to have, chamber functions, potentially wedding receptions, piano recitals, that sort of stuff. So no toga parties, if that's what you're worried about. Those days are over.
Have you determined maximum occupancy for that space? Because it seems like if you come up with a maximum occupancy for the space, that the parking lot is going to be your challenge because the parking lot is really small.
There are 86 spaces, 4 handicap spaces that belong to that lot itself. I've spoken to all of the tenants there. They love the idea of having especially the restaurants, having an opportunity to hone off of some of that business from the chamber events. I've spoken to Discount Tire, even though it's not technically on that lot. They are okay with us using their spaces in the evening when they're not open. And then, of course, the development next to it, which is where Shoe Carnival and those are, they're within, very close proximity for walking distance. So there is space there, but technically on the lot itself, there are 90 spaces.
So you do have quite a bit on that big box over there, some extra space. Parking.
Yeah, if you look at the photo, the spaces to the left of the building, that's where Shoe Carnival. There's 2 empty units there, so it rarely gets used over there.
So I was confused. The city's not leasing this. It's you. You have an
Yeah,
entity.
so we have investors, and so as a nonprofit, the chamber can take money from people. So we're doing a for-profit space, and we'll allow nonprofits. There'll be a couple of nonprofits that will go in there with us, and the chamber's kind of been floating around from sofa to sofa for the last year. So this is a good opportunity for us to have a permanent space. And my background is restaurants and events, and I run Street Fest. I run a couple other events throughout the year, and it'd be nice to have a place to have family and community space. We're at a lack of event space in this community, and so it'd be a good good opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Thank you. Any other comments from the congregation? Well, then I look for a motion to close our public hearing.
This is Commissioner Musso. I make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
This is Commissioner Bullock, second.
I have a first and a second to close our public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Is there any other comments from commissioners regarding this, or I look for a motion?
Is there any reason why it wouldn't be an acceptable use?
I think your parking's.
Well, my concern would be the parking, and even though we could say the shoe carnival and all them, because they're not.
Well, yeah,
Again,
legally
but if
you
a
can't
business
do
comes
that.
in, yeah, legally you
Yeah.
really couldn't. If they raise something about it, you'd have to get off. And again, those buildings I think are mostly leased anyway. There is an ownership of that, and that owner wouldn't. But
Did the 86 include the parking stalls to the north of the building between them and,
Yes.
and the storage units, the backside?
yes, it does. The 86 is up on these guys as well, and those are mostly for employee coming in the back door side, but which is helpful in this case especially. So.
I think he said there were 4 handicap parking spaces, so
What was
90
that?
4 handicap parking spaces, so there's 90 total? Oh, it's 80.
With the 4.
With the handicap, okay.
Yes, basically the handicap ratio is 1 per 25 in any, but if I only had 5, you still have to have 1 handicap. So it's between 1 and 25, and then between 25 and 50 is 2, up to 75, 3, 4 at 100.
So with the restaurants, how many parking spaces do you have to have per 100?
Well, the restaurant is based on square footage or seats at the tables, and so I'm not sure what's in there on the required for those, because I don't eat Thai and Korean. I
Well,
probably should make me better, but
Restaurants do require more
Yeah.
parking than typical retail.
yeah.
Yeah, Thai is highly recommended from the commission.
Yeah, it's good. So is the Korean, actually.
Number 2 of the conditions requires that they do the events after hours.
Well, yeah, but it's a restaurant. I mean, your restaurant could be until 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
That's I guess.
Well, again, that's why I put in there, I want them to work in conjunction with everybody in the plaza, knowing what the event is. Like if he's going to have an event that doesn't, and it's not going to affect the restaurants, but if it's a certain one, then, we just got to be very careful that we don't. Because again, that's why I felt we needed to bring this before the planning commission, is I do not want to endanger the existing businesses. That it isn't right on them. So they need to work with the owner of the building, the tenants within the building, about these events and plan, accordingly to that. So.
Parking is the only thing.
Tenants do like activity, that will help, but if their parking is gone, that will hinder
That's right.
it.
So if everybody's going to the big wedding reception of 2 very popular families, all of a sudden
not gonna be-
the restaurant people eating, people won't have a place to eat because.
And it's not designated parking per restaurant,
Right.
so. Can we,
Yeah, come on up so we can ask you some more questions and grill you.
So I have met with every single one of those tenants and had lengthy conversations with them. They've been very warm and receptive to the idea, permitted for us to be there, provided we are aware of the fact that we're the new guys, we're the low men on the totem pole. We do not interrupt, the times that they're open, and we have to be aware of that. And I've agreed to let them know if we have an event that we clear with them to make sure that they know that we're not going to step on their parking, because, that's how they survive, so.
See, and I don't see an issue with small, and the facility isn't that large.
Yeah, I mean, we're not
2,000
talking
square feet.
500 people or anything like that, so.
No, and 2,000 square feet isn't that big, and you're not going to stuff that many people into the space. But
It's slightly bigger in size than the dance hall over at.
that's what I was going to ask you.
So you
from a
can't,
perspective.
you can't really, blue sky. Somebody said, oh, we could probably get, 200 people in there. I said, well, is that seated? We could have rounds in there, but that's pushing it. So
What does the fire code say for maximum occupancy on that?
Well, it's. Matt, are you with us tonight? He may or may, it doesn't look like he is. I'm not sure. Not sure on the fire code on that.
Has Chief Evans seen this? Do they have to approve this as well on a conditional use?
Yeah, if it doesn't comply with a technical requirement of a building, yeah,
Well, they will go through it for a CO, so.
That's what I'm saying. Though, is
and so yeah,
Chief Evans will see this and say, okay, yeah, we can only have this. He can shut it down if this is
correct. And
I don't know if it is. I'm just saying that's why I asked the question. If it's
Yeah,
too much,
to my
Chief Evans can
understanding, every
catch it.
commercial gets a fire inspection once a year, I think, is supposed to by
right.
code. So we can take care of that, and they'll just have them post whatever it is.
Right, because I know that like some of the Perks coffee shop around the corner and stuff have a maximum occupancy
listed right there.
listed right there, and that's what I was wondering if something like this,
I'm sure we'd have to have that. Yeah.
whatever that is, that was my question. I mean, you'll figure out the cars.
How many parking spaces in this parking lot is actually assigned to that space?
I'm not aware of what's assigned specifically to each space. I'm sure it varies if it's a restaurant or if it's the pharmacy has so many per employee.
Most of them don't do assigned,
Well, it's not assigned.
unless it gets really so bad, then the owner of the development will then start doing that. But I don't know of any of our, multi-tenant places that really have specifically for, a particular tenant. I don't think we've got to that point yet. So.
Okay.
And my goal is certainly not to upset my fellow tenants. So
How do you plan on controlling people parking in your the other tenants' parking space when you're running an event?
well, I think the time of the day certainly is going to have a lot to do with that. And we'll just have to have someone outside. We kind of thought of that already. If we have a special event, we're going to have somebody outside directing where they can park or where they can't park.
Okay.
See, I think, and I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking out of my own mind, which is a scary thought, but I think worst case scenario is a wedding,
Sure.
because that's going to draw the most people. I mean, I'm visioning this more like what you were saying for small, more intimate type of gatherings where you have 20 or 30 people or 40 people at most. It's not going to be a huge, something that's going to be, in my mind's eye, that's what I'm seeing. Because 2,000 square feet just isn't a lot of room, in all honesty.
Right.
Especially for, it's not a large reception hall. So I don't see any reason. I think it's a good use of the space, personally.
We've also considered working with Discount Tire, and if we have an event, and again, it's not going to be massive, it's not going to be a lot of people in there, but work something out where we do valet, parking and take their cars over to Discount Tire and not have them park at the restaurant space. I'll swing the bat at whatever works.
Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
Are we comfortable?
I would just recommend you add a fifth condition about the fire chief,
Yeah,
whatever,
I agree
place a
with that.
placard as per the approval of the fire chief, or request, whatever his determination be, that the placard be placed in the main square.
I just don't want to see the other businesses hindered by the parking. Like when I drive up Sand Hill Boulevard, there's cars parked everywhere. There's not enough. I know that's a whole different world, but it's still a parking issue. And I'm okay with the event. I just want to make sure that there's parking and it's not hampering other businesses. Because if it takes off and does great, which we hope it does, but we don't want to be hurting someone else's business at the same time, so.
And I wonder if at their events, they can give them a little map of where parking is acceptable. So
Well,
I see a head nod.
but the primary use of the building actually is for the offices. That's kind of that's kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, basically, is the event stuff, I would guess. Is that,
Well, the
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce luncheons, stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
And that's what I seen. I didn't see, not to be rude, I don't see it being a huge wedding venue. I mean,
no.
but the lunches and stuff like that, and those will be held at lunchtime when all the other people are there. So the parking is what would worry me, is just because that's going to be the main goal.
So this might be one where there's a couple of technical areas that you may want staff to just, you may say, you know what, because it's not critical that it get approved today, we can table it, ask that we have, help the appropriate staff here to interact with you on those questions about fire and parking and things. And
Well, I'm
rather
just
than
curious
making
how
a
many.
condition, you can just
I would
ask
like
that
to
it-
know how many, because sorry, for the restaurants, there has to be so much parking for them, correct?
Correct.
And the nail salon has to have so much parking. And so they're already established businesses, so their parking should come out of the 86 total, right? I mean, it's not that he gets all 86, but if they need this many and they need this many, that only leaves how much left, right?
Yeah, especially if you're talking during the regular business hours, right? Now, if you're talking, a late night or after hour type application, staff and even Drew's comments, we can make we can bend the rules for that type of application. But you're right.
I would like to know how many stalls the other guys need to have before we say, well, there's 86 here. Well, Royal Tie's not busy, so they're only going to get 3. That's not fair because per their whatever their code is, they have to have so many spots. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. And
And it's based on number of seats or square foot, which is ever the greater.
And we can find that information out before we.
Yeah,
where it's those other businesses that it'll be infecting.
those stall definitions were required when this developer came in and proposed that building, right? And so Drew's department reviews the space, reviews the use. There's a determination as a minimum amount of parking. And of course, we'd love to do more than minimum, but yeah, you're right, that your analysis is accurate.
So we don't know how much of those is left for this one. Is that right? So that's what I would like to know. How much is left once you take out everybody else's? Basically, that's what we're looking at because they're already there. That's what I would like to see, that we know how much the other ones are entitled to. So if something does come up, we can be like, look, it matches. It's okay.
I guess the landlord's not here, so, because he would know how many each stall or each.
And the city can determine that for you too. So we can be ready for that also. And then we can also be ready for you on the fire capacity. If you want to make those conditions and let the staff be the ones that finalize that, or it sounds like, I think there's some good discussion that if you table it, you can all be part of as well.
I would like to see, just to know where there is, because I don't want to put, I go to a Discount Tire and you can't find a parking spot. So if we're adding more in there, I just want to make sure that we're not taking away from those other businesses. Even though they might not be very busy, we still need to look and see what they have. So I would make a motion, we table this until the next, is it the next one, Drew?
Yeah.
It was December 3rd?
December 2nd or 1st, isn't it?
December 1st.
Well, I make a motion, we table this until December 1st so we can get that, the
Fire
fire capacity, or the capacity from the fire department, and what the other units' minimum requirements are for their parking stalls.
I had the same question as you, but you asked it way better than I did. So I'm going to second that.
Well, I guess we have a motion. Do we have a second?
She just did.
Oh, she seconded it? Oh, thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bullock to table this and a second by Commissioner Tupou. Let's have individual voting. Tupou,
Aye.
Bullock,
Aye.
Musso?
I just look at it, we're just putting off the inevitable. And why waste the extra 2 weeks? But personal opinion, but I'll vote aye.
Michelle, I would vote a nay. So I'm on the same team, but it's unanimously approved to be tabled. So we'll table 7A till December 1st for the reason of we want to know occupancy per fire code and the occupancy of the other tenants for parking purposes.
Just to clarify for the record, Commissioner, did you vote nay or aye?
I said nay.
Okay, so I think you said unanimous. For the
Oh,
record, it'll
I
be
did. I'm
it'll be
sorry.
3-1, 3 aye, 1 nay.
Yep. Okay, there you go. There you go, Kathy.
Yeah, that was just to help Kathy.
Yep. Okay, we'll move forward. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8A, which is a public hearing also for consideration and recommendation to the City Council for Stamson Estates final plat amendment located at approximately 3287 South Stansome Lane. Applicant is Justin Gee, and we'll turn the time over to Eldon.
Thanks, Commissioner. The applicant is requesting approval of an amended final plat for the Stamson Estates amended subdivision. The reason for this amendment request is to make the depth of lots 9 through 12 10 feet deeper. Staff has reviewed the proposed amended final plat and finds it conforms to the single-family residential zoning of the development. The subdivision also remains in compliance with the subdivision ordinances of the city. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the amended final plat for the Stamson Estates amended subdivision to the City Council based on the following original findings and subject to the following original conditions, and are also found in your reports. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Staff, or commissioners, any questions? This is, what I remember is, wasn't it Mom Staley that got up and talked about and wondered if Ralph knew about this? So
She did,
I guess
yeah.
Ralph's happy.
It was it was just the extension on the back of those lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one lot that needed the extension, and
Right.
Ralph was kind enough to grant more than what was needed.
Okay, this is a public hearing. I'd open up the public hearing to
This is
people
final
in
plat
chamber.
approval, is it?
What's that?
It's not a public hearing, is it?
Says it's public hearing.
For final plat approval?
This is an amendment.
An amended
Oh,
does.
oh.
That's how you get out of having everybody sign the plat. You can hold the public hearing, then it's just the lots that are affected.
Sorry. Looks pretty quiet out there. Any comments? Okay, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
It's Commissioner Musso. I make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
This is Commissioner Bullock. I'll second.
Have a first and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 Public hearing is now closed. Go back to the commissioners and ask for any questions or comments to this item. If there's no comments, I look for a motion.
This is Commissioner Tupou. I make a motion to approve item 8A for the amended final plat approval for Stamson Estates Amendment Subdivision located at 3287 South Stamson Lane with the 2 findings and 5 conditions, and recommend approval with those conditions and findings to the city council.
Commissioner Bullock, I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tupou, a second by Commissioner Bullock. Individual voting, Tupou,
Aye.
Bullock,
Aye.
Musso,
Aye.
and I'm Sheila. I'm also an aye. It passes unanimously, and we'll pass this item 8A to the city council for approval. Commission, or item number 9A is some planning commission training. And so I think we're just going to turn some time over to our attorney, Thad Siegtaler. Sigmiller.
I'm gonna use the Elmo so we can justify.
Siegtaler is a cousin of mine.
That's right.
Sigmiller.
Well, when we want to get after each other in our family, we say egg smeller. So there's all-
Yeah, just gonna say, Steve, I've never,
wanna
you take
use-
care of the Elmo there, he does it, go ahead.
Yeah, my goal is to use the Elmo so that we can justify its existence this year. I think this is the first use between the commission or the council.
So how much public funds was spent on that thing?
We used to use this every meeting back in the day. This was really important. How do I zoom here, Drew? Okay. It doesn't, it's so old, it doesn't have a remote. So the purpose of today's training, and one of my objectives and one of my goals to the city council is that I'm gonna undertake to make sure we have our training quarterly, both between the commission and the council. With the commission, there's also statutory requirements to be trained. You have 4 hours that you're supposed to be trained every year. One of those is accomplished by just attending 12 meetings. If you attend 12 meetings, the legislature says you've done 1 hour. And I think between our attendance and the amount of meetings we have, we'll be fine on that. So we're looking at 3 hours at other opportunities. Sometimes if we can get, I went to the bathroom so we could get all 3 done tonight. No, I think we're about 30 minutes tonight. Sometimes we'll be able to get you to the League of Cities and Towns or different trainings, and so it won't all just be me talking. But the goal is to chip them off about every quarter to make sure that by the end of the year we've got you taken care of. Today we're going to talk about the genealogy of Planning Commission, how you got here. You're looking at a Utah state ordinance. When governments started to adopt land use and zoning laws, one of the elements that they would impose and require is the establishment of a planning commission. So before they started codifying zoning, it was of common law and a lot more difficult to keep up with and a lot more nuance. And then we codified it, it became of statutory definition. And together with that, Utah and all the other states required that a planning commission be established. So you'll see there in 1A, it says each municipality shall enact an ordinance establishing a planning commission. That's where you came from. That's why we have the planning commission is we as a city are required by the state to do so. You'll see the next section, 1B, says the ordinance shall define. And then it goes through some categories that it's required to define. And in a few pages here, we'll look at Washington's ordinance that does just that. But just to let you know, we have a planning commission because the state requires us to have one if we choose to adopt zone designations. If we choose to have zoning areas and zone designations, we need to have a planning commission body to handle the work that's associated with zoning and the land use planning regime of this state. You'll notice there, section 2, I recognize that it's not significant, but the planning commission is authorized to be paid and also be reimbursed for expenses of the work that they do.
Can we ask for a raise?
Absolutely.
I'm just
You've
teasing.
got a council representative back there that
He left.
He left.
He knew it was coming.
training didn't keep him here, huh? So the next.
Just on a side note to that though, if you knew how much you make compared to others, you probably won't get your raise.
I'm just teasing. I wasn't expecting any reimbursement.
Some just get a Big Mac every time they come and that's it.
Hey, in this market, everybody's asking for a raise, it's worth it. This is also a state statute. This is the statute that follows the one we just reviewed. This is the legislature defines some of the powers and duties of a planning commission. So not only did they tell us we have to have one, they're telling us a little bit of how they have to look. And so you'll look there, 1A, the planning commission shall review and make recommendation to the legislative body for. And so when your agendas come to you and you vote to approve, you're voting to approve a recommendation to the legislative body with one exception, which is conditional use permits. On those, you vote to approve those because of our local ordinance. That's how it's written. And then you'll see there in one, a number of categories: a general plan, land use regulations, delegation of power to some other body. And these are real general powers and duties. A delegation of power to an appeal authority, and then application processes. If you look at number 2, before making a recommendation to a legislative body on an item, the planning commission shall hold a public hearing. And so you've done those. You did a couple tonight, right? And so that's statutory. That's the reason why we do that, is the legislature finds that it's appropriate and proper that we give the public a chance to show up and hear the business of land use planning. Number 3, a legislative body may adopt, modify, or reject a planning commission's recommendation. And so some of you have lived through that, where you recommend for approval and then it gets denied, or you recommend for denial and it gets approved. The legislature is what established that. I'll call it tension, but it's essentially decision-making at the 2 levels. That comes from the legislature. We abide by it, and sometimes it happens, and it's sometimes, you maybe don't understand why, but the legislature built it that way. And then number 5, this is an interesting one. Every now and again, somebody's like, well, why is the city one the one presenting for, Doug Terry's road dedication like we saw tonight? And the answer is, well, the city has departments that deal with this stuff on a daily basis. And number 5 allows the city and its staff to be the ones that initiate or propose actions before the planning commission. And in fact, most of ours begin with a city staff member. And then sometimes you'll bring the applicant or others along. And so again, where did you come from and why do we behave the way we do? A lot of it is statutory. Any questions or discussion you want on that?
That if I just may, because just my 20 plus years in this is, I hope that you don't get like I've had a few planning commissioners in my 20 plus years sometimes just take it and say, well, doesn't really matter. We're just a recommendation body. Please don't ever feel, I know sometimes you may feel that, but if you do, don't say it out loud. But I hope that you don't feel that way, because I hope that everything you do, even if it is a recommendation, but it does have an impact. I mean, it really does. At least it gives that next body something to establish their decision making on, whether they're going to uphold, modify, or overturn. But I'm just saying that just, because of all my experiences, that, if you do feel that, come talk to me. I'll give you a good, pep talk, maybe, give you a little massage on the shoulder, loosen you up, make you feel a little better about everything. But again, I've just from time to time, that's been wrung out there in meetings. I've, attended thousands of planning commission and city council meetings, but I just hope that you don't, if you do get there, do come talk to me. But it is more than just recommendation in a sense.
We were a shield.
Yeah.
We were a shield so that when the councilmen run again, they can say, oh, they recommended it.
That's right. It was those guys. But again, but the whole point is that sometimes you are the only public hearing as well. There isn't, like I say, with your preliminary plats, many folks wish they could have the public hearing with the city council. But you know what? I think it's lined up just right in those, that they don't hold the public hearing on the preliminary plats at the city council, because it is yours. And so, there are certain steps and ways that it goes through. So always feel that there is, a rational thing that you do make a difference. You really do. So sorry.
Oh, that's great. And if Drew's pep talk doesn't work, you can blame the legislature from 1987 or run for office. We have elections every 2 years, and you can go be on the body that gets to then decide what to do with planning commission recommendations. I think the legislature had wisdom. I think the 2-layer system affords the public opportunity to come and hear and see and know how their community is being developed. As you'll see in Washington City, it's the Saunders that are here for all of that. And, you know, we don't get as much participation as I think the legislature anticipated, but we offer that. And if folks want to come and see or hear or now watch, the opportunity is important. Land use, the decisions that ultimately get made are vested rights, and the public should have a right to see and hear and be in that. So the next document is the city's planning commission ordinance. So we went from the state law, now we're at the city's ordinance. Again, the state law said the city shall adopt this ordinance, and then gave us the list of things it should do. So in 931, established membership appointment, it says the planning commission is hereby established for the purpose of developing plans for the physical development of the city, making reports and recommendations relating to the development of the city, administering the applicable provisions of this title, and to carry out other activities authorized by the city council to enable planning commission to perform its functions and promote municipal planning. So again, a general statement as to what you do. I think that your experience has been that you operate well within that statement. You'll notice here that the city council is essentially the gatekeeper of the commission, though, and you'll see in other provisions the same thing. The city council has the ability to influence the planning commission and how it exists. Part B there defines the number of members and one alternate, which we've got the experience. Council or Commissionwoman Tupou is the alternate, but she's operational today, and you'll see lower on that she's always operational. It's just a question of whether she votes or not. There are requirements, you know, to be a planning commissioner, you have to be a resident of the city and own real property in the city. That's the second line there. There's some interesting kind of obscure provisions. At least 3 of the members shall hold no other public office or position. I don't recall that that's ever been an issue for our planning commission, but if you're elected to other positions, we're going to need to find ways to move some of you out to those and comply with that. One of the planning commissioner members shall be a member of the Board of Adjustments. It's another requirement by ordinance of the city. The last sentence there, you'll recall a few months ago, we had the discussion, can the alternate make a motion? So you'll see the last sentence, the alternate member of the planning commission shall attend all meetings of the planning commission and may participate in all discussions and proceedings. However, he or she may vote only in the case where another planning commissioner is absent. So again, you can attend, you can participate, you can make a motion, Council Commissionwoman Tupou. If the 5 non-alternates are present, you could make the motion, but your vote wouldn't be counted. But otherwise, you're welcome to participate in the meeting to the full.
Is Jason on the Board of Adjustments?
Who is the commissioner that's on the Board of Adjustments? Drew, do you know offhand?
What is a Board of Adjustments?
Yeah, what is it?
It's an appeal board, essentially,
Or what?
for land use decisions. that
People
were to
don't
be
agree with
appealed.
my decision mostly. I mean, that's how it's written. But there's 3 or 4 other items in the book. You can go read it. Feel free. In fact, I'd go read our Board of Adjustments thing, and I think you should. But I mean, I've been here 15 years, and I think I've had 4, maybe 5 Board of Adjustment meetings in all that time. And they basically are an appellant body to things.
So you have somebody, a city councilman?
No, city councilman doesn't sit on your Board of Adjustment, but one planning commissioner does.
Okay.
The Board of Adjustments is a body that we assemble anytime that somebody wishes to appeal
just when
a
you
land
have
use
an
decision.
issue.
And that's why you don't have city council members on it, is usually it was their decision that's subject to appeal, or it's a staff members.
And the city council, I think, is the appellant on the Board of Adjustment, so that's why you don't have them on there.
And we do it so rarely that usually it's almost assembling a new board every time it comes up, because the ones that were on it last time have moved, retired, you know. And so typically we reassemble the board whenever it comes up, and it's not often. If any of you want to be that Board of Adjustment appointee, let us know and we can formalize that, at least document it for the next time one comes up. If there's any volunteers.
Gives you a raise. 2 Big Macs.
Comes with a small fry.
Okay.
You'll see the term of office there. You're all familiar with that. We've staggered them so that you don't all come up on expiry date at the same time.
How does that work? Because you basically got 3 of us here that are all within this year.
you'll fill in. It's like Latay's gonna, hers is up, even though she's the newest person on, she filled in for Van's vacant. Van is coming up in January, that seat. So she can reapply for that one and maybe get reappointed, but if you're filling a seat, you fill that 3-year term no matter where it is.
I thought I filled Van's because
No, you were on when Van was here, right?
I was the alternate when Van was here.
That's right. So you were still on that 6-member board when Van was
You
here.
were filling Lonnie's, I think.
Corey came on the same day I did.
So there was Lonnie.
I was the alternate when we started.
Monty had to give up his seat because he moved out. And then January, we had 2 of you come in because one was, the 3-year term was up, and the person filling it was Jason because he'd already came back just to help out. And so that's how it is. But, so whoever took Monty's spot, which I think is Corey, I think you're the one who got the 3-year vacancy. Corey was filling Monty's spot, so he'll be up within the next year and a half. And then Latay is filling in for Van, who would have expired this January. So fill out an application if you want to stay on. And it's up to them whether they'll reseat you, the city council.
Please do.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to step in, but that's kind of, I didn't know if you
I was-
remember all the names and the people. But
I wasn't
that's-
sure because I thought that's how it worked. I thought when Van left, I would just take his 3-year spot, but I was okay.
No, you have your own 3-year. Corey's filling in for Monty's
Okay.
unused seat, and I think it's either this July or next January that Hill's expire, but he can again reapply, and if the council wants to keep him on, they can do that. It was, I'm not saying it was a policy because it's not, but the council just had a thing that they'd let people run, stay in if they wanted to for 2 terms for 6 years, but it's not a guarantee at any time. Brian just got re-upped last July, right? So he's in his 2nd term, on that.
First term.
You were cut short. You filled in for somebody. I think you filled Rex's empty spot. So we had a lot of those commissioners coming and going to do because either moving out or other things, we had a lot of them there for a run, but that's kind of what it is. So Corey's will expire whenever Monty's was supposed to, and then he'll have to reapply.
And I think just to clarify, the alternate seat doesn't follow the person. The alternate is, we just treat that as the most recently appointed. And so Commissioner Tupou came in as the alternate, not because the person she replaced was the alternate, because she was the most recently applied, and her term would be the term of the person who she replaced, which was Van.
And his expires in.
Right, so they could re-up her, but they instead of, I'm not gonna say it's a
It'd be like-
demotion or
it'd be like
promotion, but
Brian's.
that'd be the city council would just say, well, she's still the youngest in tenure. We'll keep her as the alternate till the next 6-month person or whatever. If it's a new person, it's usually the newest person ends up being the alternate, just so they don't have to feel like they have to, they can sit, and especially if they're the 6th person, it takes relief off of some of them. Thinking, okay, I just can sit and learn, I can talk, but I don't have to.
Okay.
that
I was
helps.
just confused who was what and where was who.
The alternate gets the same compensation, they get the same participation, and the reason they don't vote is because if there's a group of 5, we can't have 6 voters, right?
Because you'd end up with a 3.
And so the only reason why they don't vote is because we've got too many voters, yeah. You'll see there at the top of this page, vacancies of appointed members occurring other than through the expiration of terms shall be filled for the remainder of the unexpired term. That's what Drew just discussed with you. The next sentence is interesting. It doesn't happen much, mostly as a compliment to the commissioners that get appointed. The city council shall have the right to remove any member of the planning commission for misconduct or non-performance of duty. And so again, this is an indication that the city council's kind of the chief of the commission, if you will. They have that authority. I've never seen them do it. And again, you've seen it once. I've never seen it. Drew's seen it once. Again, it's mostly a compliment to the people we have. And
It was a lack of attendance is what it was, just because they were working out of town all the time. Their job changed and they had to be on the road. And because they missed 9 out of 10 times, it was just, we had to do that. So.
And most folks just show up and say, hey, it's not working anymore. Let's transition. I mean, most people just handled that without needing to be removed, but it had to happen there. 934 talks compensation again. So the city's codified what the state law allows. 935 talks officers. You'll see there the first sentence, that's how we get a chairperson. The city code requires that the city council appoint a chairman from the board. And so you'll notice usually the board appoints their own chairman, but in this case, it's a city council appointment. 936 meetings, all of you lived through this. As far as the notice and the things, one thing that's unique to Washington City is this 300-foot radius requirement for notice that we do. In some situations, it produces a full room, and others, it still feels like there's not enough. But that's where the city council, remember Drew was involved with that, and other council members, that's what they decided was an effort to be more inclusive than what had previously been required. In that section also, you'll notice the costs of the notices and the cost of the application and the process are borne by the applicants. And so the folks that come to your meetings are bearing the cost of the process. Of course, if they're successful in getting approval, that they will gain vested rights for real property.
So I got a question on that one. So it's a 300-foot radius from every point, from every external point on the property, correct? Okay, so like,
Sometimes that's a really creative map. Sometimes it's easy, something depending on the shape of the property.
right,
You know, the city's triangle that you looked at I mean, that one had some interesting radiuses because of the shape of the parcel. So essentially, Drew's department takes each corner, draws a 300-foot radius.
and then didn't we put into the code, though, there would be a minimum of so many notices sent out?
30.
30 is all?
No duplicates and a minimum of 30.
That's in another section of the code, but you're right. There's a minimum that's always required.
It seems like on bigger, it seems to me like on bigger projects that more notice should be given, personally. You know, like on that Green Springs thing,
Yeah.
you know, that 300 feet didn't take in a whole lot of area where people actually lived. And 30 notices for something that's going to affect or potential to have 2,000 homes seems a little inadequate also.
So I think you're probably not the only person that might feel that way. You know, look at 937 rules and procedures. This is something that I don't think you've had a lot of experience with because it doesn't happen much, but you'll see the first sentence. The Planning Commission may adopt such rules and procedures as it deems necessary for the conduct of its business. You know, if the Planning Commission wanted to move along the lines of Commissioner Musso and say, hey, we want to expand that, you have authority under the ordinance to adopt rules and procedures that you deem to be necessary. Of course, it'd need to be by a majority decision.
But we don't see those things, though.
What do you mean?
Until, well, as an example, you know, if we say, well, we want to expand out the radius, we don't see that until after that proposal is on the Planning Commission docket, essentially.
And what I'm saying is you could adopt a rule that says for big projects,
So
projects.
change the rules is what you're saying? Oh, okay. Okay.
I just would recommend you be very careful that you don't put yourselves or the city in a didn't treat everybody fair process. I'm just saying that, and that would be by some aggrieved applicant or somebody, or even a aggrieved citizen. Well, how, you know, because it's always the person that lives across the street that I hear from. Well, the notice didn't come to me. Well, the 300-foot ended in the guy's backyard that got the notice. You're still, and on a 100-foot deep lot plus a 50-foot street, that's an extra, you see what I'm saying? 150 feet.
That's what
But,
I'm
you know, well, I'm just across the street from him. How come I don't get one? Well, then the person behind them saying, well, my neighbor got one. How come I, you know, so you can see.
But I understand
I'm just, because there's always these things to see, but I know that every once in a while, and as I look at the broader picture, we just got to, and what those rules and stuff would be, you know, where's that cutoff line?
Right.
If it's a thing of a PCD of X amount, but then someone's going to say, well, how come I'm right across, it's always I'm right across the street or right next door.
I understand that, but I'm just thinking on the two biggest projects that we've done since I've been on the Planning Commission, you know, you're sending them to cows for the most part. You know, there's
Both
just
of
not a
them
lot
have
of
been-
people on both Long Valley and
They've been in
Green
areas,
Springs. You know, 'cause they're
rural areas
huge.
with large parcels. Yeah, you're right.
But if you're inviting people that are so far away, making decisions on things in that area, I'm just throwing you out.
No, I know, but I think the people who are most affected are the people like along Washington Dam Road. I think those people would like to have known about Long Valley Junction personally. You know what I'm saying? And and I don't know, I can understand you have to have guidelines and you have to do it. But, there's rules and then there's common courtesy. And I think sometimes we overlook the common courtesy of, who is going to be most affected by these things.
Well, we
30
ta-
people
we
down that
tabled
road.
both-
You got that.
I'm sorry?
30 people coming down the Washington Dam Road. I mean, there's not that many homes coming down Washington Dam Road until you get into the industrial area.
Right, it's property owners though. It's property owners, but still, that's what I'm saying is that I think those people, if they would have known about the public hearing for it, because, there's only a few people like the Saunders who actually read public notices. And I don't know if you actually even read them, but that are fully aware of things that are going on in the city. So I don't know. And that's just, I'm sorry, that's personal pet peeve and I'll shut up.
I don't think you should be sorry.
Both those projects were tabled once. As they were tabled, could that come out to extend the notice?
So on
boundary?
tabling, to renotice it, it'd be kind of a lengthy table because we also need time to get all those out.
Just a thought.
I would, if you want to make some changes, and tonight's not the appropriate time to make the changes, it's just to talk about what you can do. But if the commission has some inclination, I want you to know that you have the authority to make rules and procedures. I would echo Drew's. We would need to make them in a way that they're equally applicable to landowners. But if the commission finds, hey, we're in a situation where our biggest projects and most of our units are coming in rural areas where the parcels are enormous, and a 300-foot radius may not be the right way to do it, I think you could add a rule or procedure on top of that. And of course, staff would help to just make sure that it's applicable and something that we can regulate effectively. Any other questions on that? That's a good discussion. 938 quorum and vote, you'll see that it takes 3 members to make a quorum. And the second sentence there, evidence shall not be presented unless a quorum is present. What that means is you can't hold a meeting. If you don't have a quorum, we won't even open the meeting. We'll just cancel it. And then the follow-up there is the concurring vote of at least 3 is required to pass a motion. And so that's familiar to the commission. And again, Planning Commission 939, upon the approval of City Council, may employ staff and employ expenditures. Now, that's kind of built into our system. We've been doing this long enough that none of you have felt like you've employed staff, but the reality is there's a lot of staff that have jobs related to what you do as a function and preparing things to get here. And so that's something the Planning Commission's authorized to do, is to spend monies of the city. So that's the general where you came from and what you're allowed to do so far. Any questions about any of that? I especially thought it was interesting, and of notable interest, that if you want to, as a commission, want to adopt some rules and procedures, I mean, you have that authority. You don't have to go to the city council for that. Next, I wanted to talk about our conditional use ordinance. Not because we've had conditional uses recently, but because, well, not targeted to any one of the conditional uses, but because there's been enough, I thought let's train on this because the examples are going to be pretty good. And so, as you know, we have zoning, and within the zoning designations, there's what are called permitted uses and conditional uses. Permitted uses still have to come before the bodies for review and approval, but their uses don't have to be approved in concept. The conditional use is a use that may be approved, but in concept and under the circumstances. So you'll see there the purpose paragraph. I'll read that. Certain uses which may be harmonious under special conditions and in specific locations within a district may be improper under general conditions and in other locations. The conditional use permit is intended to allow the proper integration of such uses into the city only if such uses are designed and laid out in a manner approved by the Planning Commission. And so, in criminal law, in some situations, the system requires that you be proven guilty. In others, you're required to prove that you're innocent, right? And in this situation, the applicant has to prove that they're innocent. They have to prove that it's a good use. They don't get to say, I get it because it's listed as conditional use and I'm here asking for it. They have to say, I'm here asking for a conditional use and I'm showing you why it should be approved. And that's kind of how the only if works out. So they get it, not because it's listed, they get it because they have shown the planning commission, to the planning commission's satisfaction, that it's designed and laid out in a manner that the planning commission is willing to approve. 917.2, the permit's required. You'll see the second sentence there. A conditional use may be revoked by the planning commission upon failure to comply with the conditions precedent to the original approval of permit. And so in every one, the commission has discussed conditions, and you'll see here the ordinance authorizes the commission to revoke that. We would have a hearing, we would notice, put it up to notice, have a hearing and allow the applicant or the permit holder to come in. But upon the conclusion of the hearing, this body does have the authority to revoke it if you reach the findings that would justify that.
Would staff bring that to us?
Typically, in theory, staff should know about that and be the one that brings it along too.
It's either staff or the two that I've been involved with that we have revoked. I've done, I think, 5 of these, but 3 of them, they got it worked out in the meeting during that revocation meeting, the public hearing process. But 2 of them, out of those 2, one of them was brought by a neighbor, the next door neighbor, who knew what those conditions were and knew that the person wasn't living up to them. And so then they brought it, but staff initiated and did everything, but it was brought to us initially by the neighbor. And then the other one, we just knew they weren't following it.
Right.
And,
I mean, it'll come to staff before we see it.
oh yes, we're going to write it up
I mean, when it
and
says
we're going to
to
vet
us,
out
well,
that,
we
hey,
won't.
yeah. And
Or
in
they
fact,
won't
most of the
stop.
time we're going to tell that person, you know, condition number 7 on your conditional use permit, you just have ignored your whole time. I'm going to give you, you know, please, I'm trying not to take you to a revocation, but I will if I have to, is usually the conversation we have. Please get this taken care of within X amount of time. And then sometimes people just say, forget you, you know, and so, but you still go through the time you gave them. And then you come back and say, well, now I have to let you know you'll be getting a notice in the mail. We're going to be putting you back in front of the planning commission, and this staff is going to ask for a revocation of your CUP based on you've neglected conditions 7 and 3 and 14, you know, whatever the things are breaking. And then you as a group can have that with that person. Just say, you know, staff's told us you're not doing this. We've gone by. Yeah, staff's right. We see that you're not complying. You know, now you'd give them their chance to, you know, plead their case to you. But if they don't want to change it, then you have that right to revoke or put them on a time to get it cleaned up and bring it back. And so there's lots of things you can do.
And from staff, we'd have a formal letter to them letting them know that we're going to set them for a revocation hearing. Ultimately, you would be revoking vested rights. And so staff's concern would be to make sure that the process, that there's an adequate record, that we've given them notice, given them a hearing and a chance to, you know, be present at the process.
Or giving them a chance to
correct.
Yeah, we always try to work it out before we bring it here, because again, we know, I mean, especially if it's an established business, we don't want to just cut the legs out, but we give them every chance to fix it. And then if they don't, we don't really have any other choice. So
Sometimes the complication, you know, your recent conditional uses have all had 1 or more conditions. The storage units, let's say they end up building something and don't properly locate the billboard. You know, sometimes it's impossible to correct also, right? And that would be a tough hearing, but sometimes the violation, just the condition isn't fixable. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of those either, but I think it's important for the commission to know that authority does lie with this body. You get to grant them, and you can revoke them if the need arises. The application paragraph there is very similar to all the other applications that come before you. The 300-foot radius, the requirement to give notice is similar for conditional uses as it is for the other applications that you see. And so really the difference with conditional uses is it's a use that they have to show the commission, to the commission's satisfaction, should be approved. Whereas if it's a permitted use, they come in and say, look, it's a permitted use. We just have to make sure we're there for the technical squad, Drew.
I was just going to point out, you know, people want, you know, say, well, where's a 300-foot thing come from, especially an applicant? That's state law. You know, that's the minimum the state has put out. So you can go beyond that, but you know, the 300 foot is what the state is required. So that's why a lot of cities, you'll see that 300 foot in all the state of Utah almost right across the board because it's the mandate by the state.
So you'll see there 917.4 conditional use carries a fee. We also require that they bring, you know, the paperwork and necessary studies and plans to satisfy, just like any other development. And so your plans, your signage plans, your landscaping, your elevations all have to come to the commission as part of the application.
And the conditional use permit stays with the property, not with the,
Correct. It's a vested right. It runs with the land. You're right.
like, when I moved into my buildings for work, there was already a steel fab shop there, so I was able just to go in and not have to come for a
Correct.
conditional use permit.
Yep, it's a vested right that runs with the land. Section 2 here, not all of our code says this so specifically, but the Community Development Department is going to review the whole application, give it comments, and can even hold it up or you know, stay it while the applicant is correcting or addressing concerns expressed from staff. And so, you know, that's the case in most of the processes, but especially on conditional uses, we want it to be clear to the applicants that staff is going to give this a close look, because conditional uses aren't the routine. They're not the permitted use. You're asking for a use in an area where you need to come and tell us and justify why we should consider and approve it.
And try not to hold that last sentence up that often. I know some people might make that a goal. Did you guys read the last sentence there?
4.
Yeah, on the bottom, the application cannot be tabled for more than 4 planning commission meetings. Just, I don't want that to be a goal for some of you guys.
As a goal, why would it be a goal?
I'm just joking.
I'm
4
just-
times tabled is pretty,
Times 2, that's 8 weeks.
that's,
I
that's,
don't think we should table that one tonight personally, but that's okay.
no, I just pointed that out that you know, there is a limit on tabling as well. And a lot of people don't know, but I'm just trying to break the monotony up there, you guys.
So paragraph C, I think, is a really interesting one, because it goes back to the nature of what is a conditional use and how does the commission consider. So I'm going to read paragraph 1. It says the planning commission may approve, modify, and approve or deny any application for conditional use permit that is to be located within any district in which a particular conditional use is permitted by the use regulations of this title. And then the next section, I think, is really critical as you consider these. This is the standard of proof that you should be expecting from the applicant. In approving any conditional use permit, the planning commission shall impose such requirements and conditions as required by law, and any additional conditions as may be necessary for the protection of adjacent properties and the public health, safety, welfare, and aesthetics of the city. And so the standards are requirements of law. Staff usually is right on top of that, right? The 2 reasons for the tabling tonight, I would say, are requirements of law: fire capacity, parking capacity. You've got other criteria that you can impose: protection of adjacent properties, public health and safety, welfare, and even aesthetics of the city. So by ordinance, those are, what's the word I'm trying to look? Those are metrics and standards of your decisions that you can impose upon a conditional use applicant. In other words, they have to prove to you that their request for conditional use is satisfactory within those categories. Section 2, I think so. Yeah, and I think this commission does a really good job of maintaining a dialogue with applicants and talking about those categories. Yeah. Section 2 talks about, you know, what it may include: specifications concerning structures, landscaping, density, ingress, egress, fencing, parking, lighting. All of those this commission has brought up within the last few meetings alone. Section 3, this is another one that talks about the applicant has to prove they're innocent. The commission doesn't have to prove they're guilty. The planning commission shall not authorize a conditional use permit unless evidence is presented showing: A, the proposed use at the particular location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood and community. Again, so shall not authorize unless the applicant shows it's necessary or desirable. and B, that such use will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare. Again, so they must prove, and the commission shall not authorize unless it's proven that under those circumstances, it won't be detrimental to health, safety, or welfare. C, that the proposed use will comply with the regulations and conditions specified in this title. Again, that's an area that staff usually covers. That's part of their report. And D, proposed use will conform to the intent of the general plan. It's another one that staff usually covers. And so you'll see again, the applicant for conditional use has to prove to you that they meet all of those. Then you can make the decision that they have and authorize the conditional use. Any question on that? So part of the goal of training is to inform you of that, and you can ask, you can tell them, look, how is this necessary or desirable for this location? And if it doesn't, you can say, you know, I'm going to vote no because I find that it's not necessary or desirable for this location, and they haven't told me any reason why it would be. Correct. So that's a codified in ordinance as one of the conditions that must be shown, and if it's not, the ordinance says shall not authorize.
Okay, so under this ordinance, then you could really keep out virtually anything that you wanted to that was considered undesirable to the city. So, and I'm going back, we moved here 27 years ago. And 26 years ago, they had the big hullabaloo about the strip club down in, or not the porn shop in Mesquite. If you guys are old, you were still a baby at that point.
My siblings were going down to protest.
To picket.
And I'm not proud of that history. I would hope we wouldn't do the same thing today.
Right. But what I'm saying though is that, like, under this ordinance though, they would not be allowed to have that in the city.
Correct. If the council found that one of these wasn't proved, you could say, we deny your request because you haven't shown us that it's necessary or desirable to that location. So if they're well prepared, they're going to give you a presentation that says this is necessary and desirable because of A through Z, right? And then,
That's why we don't put those in conditional use permits, because no, there is a reason why, because you could easily just use that. And again, I just wanted to point out here, be careful when you look at these though, because I've sat there and I've talked to many planning commissioners on these 4 items. I said, but I can tell you right now, in a junior high debate team could argue both sides of that.
Right.
So don't try to use it as a crutch or a nail to do something. I mean, sometimes that is what you want to use, but be careful that we don't, because these are the ones that get us in legal problems on being arbitrary and capricious. Exactly. Because one, you may like that particular, I'm a hunter, so anything, this I'm going to do, but if I'm anti-pets and I try to throw this out, but I didn't so we have to be very careful how we use those discretions on how we do that. I'm just
2
for
examples.
thought. Yeah.
If you said I'm voting against the storage units because I don't think they should be within any city limits, you probably lose on an arbitrary and capricious standard. Mm-hmm. If you say I'm voting against them because I don't think they're necessary or desirable to that location, you win. The court's not going to overturn you. So this is the essence of the Planning Commission: is you bring your thoughts and feelings as a resident of the city that owns property, and you get to decide on these really aesthetic, undefined categories of, is it necessary or desirable, right? Does it contribute to the general well-being? Does it promote the general welfare? And if you communicate a denial on those terms, courts are going to recognize Schill is from the city. He owns property. He's a resident. And he clearly stated that he didn't vote for it because he doesn't think it supports the welfare. And he even said that it might be dangerous. The court's not going to overturn that. If he says, I don't like it because it looks just like St. George's development, that's going to be arbitrary and capricious, right? And so to make decisions that are going to be upheld by courts, if you use the language within the statute which establishes the standard that you should consider, to Commissioner Musso's comment, it's a really oblique concept, and just about any individual from any background could probably communicate a reason why any application may not be for the benefit of the general welfare. That's why it takes 3 people to pass something, right? I mean, you got to have a consortium there. But this is the essence of the discretion of the planning commission, is you're here as a citizen exercising a very broad and kind of difficult to pin down standard for applicants. You wouldn't have had a stalemate. Oh, because we had 4.
Yeah, Corey wasn't here.
It would have, the motion would have failed.
So then they would come back and do it again.
2
just
weeks.
like a table.
Well, the motion would have failed. Somebody could have made another motion. You could have kept doing motions until something passed, but it would have been 2-2. It would have failed because we didn't have a vote to break the tie.
After a while, I would recommend to you as a staff, just recommend a table till you get your 5th person.
Yeah.
I've had to do that every once in a while when it's just 2-2 and nobody's caving in. Then I just say, 3 of you just say, let's table it till we get the 5th person.
Yeah. So a really clever applicant would come to you and say, I recognize I'm asking for a conditional use and that I need to show to you why this is good for your city. And they would speak the language of the standard and then show you the reasons why, right? That's a really clever application. I think that out in the development world, there's not quite so much of a clever view of conditional uses. They assume that they're going to be able to get everything, get a vote. And so a lot of times I'm not sure that all of these standards are presented to you. And if they're not, as you mentioned, Commissioner Anderson, you can ask them, well, what can you tell me on this point? The ordinance requires that I not authorize it unless I'm satisfied that that's available in this location. So what can you tell me? How can you help me feel like it's there? Yeah. Yep. And those parking and fire safety are C and D, right? Comply with the regulations of this title. That's the city's ordinances. Conform with intent of the general plan. So I think the fire capacity and the parking are C. Do they have sufficient to comply with just our requirements for any building? And all of your other recommendations are recommendations to the city council. When the city council considers all of the items that you just recommend to them, they have these same standards. And so when they're vesting rights for a preliminary plat, the same standards are available to the city council to be expressed. Is this necessary, desirable? Does it promote the general welfare? And so this is the planning commission's area where the standard sits here because the decision finishes here. And so conditional uses, my biggest purpose tonight was to not let them just kind of be something that's at the bottom of the agenda that we think is kind of a one-off. It's actually the primary authority that you as a body have, and you can exercise that authority as you find important for your community.
And if I just may add, I've been in some trainings on this with the Ombudsman's office. When it comes to conditional use permits, you need to give them, if you have problems with it, you need to give them the opportunity to mitigate that problem. Sometimes so don't just jump to A and say, right here, but for him, he's given advice that says, hey, give them every right, opportunity to mitigate, because we don't, you don't want to end up in my office or a court somewhere. Give them an opportunity to mitigate those out. And then if they don't feel they need to or don't want to, then you can go that route. But always try to give on a conditional, especially if it's permitted. I mean, it's labeled in the conditional use permit, section. you got to give them every opportunity to mitigate whatever your concerns are. That's why it's the conditional uses, because under certain circumstances, this thing may not be the best thing here, but if it gets, I have a mitigation I want them to do and they're going to do that, then yeah, then I can see that now going there. So always remember that, try to give them mitigating points to agree to and to do on a project, just for what that's worth.
So Drew, question. So in every zoning category, there's obviously permitted uses, and then are there conditional uses that are outlined in each zoning category? I thought I've seen that
Most
before.
part there is, yes. Every single one of them have
It's like in a
permitted.
residential, you can have a church, or in a residential, you can have a daycare, or
Yeah, but the
things
church
like
one,
that.
you got, see, and this is the,
Well,
this is the hang, no,
church-
but
the church
this is,
like
that's
that.
a great point, because federal law says you have to let them, but you can put condition, that's why they're still in the conditional. Federal law says you have to let a church in any residential. That, you can't deny unless it is something that's going to be so harmful, but it's going to be hard to find a church that would do that. But say something else, if it's going to be that harmful that you could end up with loss of life or whatever, then you can do that.
But in the zoning ordinance itself, it has things that can be in this particular zoning as a
Correct.
conditional use.
So you could say, I want privacy walls behind, each, that church would have to then do, you can put those certain things to keep headlights, from going through regular back, so those are the mitigating things I was talking about. You can put those on there, but some things you have to let go through, but you can give mitigating things that they have to adhere to. As long as you don't get too outrageous, and again, it's not being fair just because you're just tacking on things because you feel you can. Not that you would, I'm just saying.
Right. So as an example tonight, I mean, what they were proposing is basically a commercial use of that space.
Mhm.
So where should that have been? Instead of in C2, should it have been C3? Should it have been AP? What should it have been? Technically, without them having to ask for a conditional use permit.
The way our commercial zoning works, there's permitted uses listed in each one, and then
Right.
conditional uses. And within the commercial zones, they kind of carry through, right? So C1, basically, you can do anything permitted or conditional. C3, it's a lot more limited because of its location. And so where should it tonight's been? The answer is it was appropriate for the location. That's why
Right.
staff brought it
So-
through to you.
And I guess why do they have to have a conditional use for that as opposed to just being approved?
Drew had mentioned that, but explain your
because of the
rationale
parking?
again, Drew.
My rationale is because of the parking and the limited area and location of it.
Okay.
Okay, so I went back and said, okay, let's go back, because in most of my zones, I have this one paragraph. Now, sometimes I like it and sometimes I cringe that it's in there, but it is in the code.
Mhm.
Other things, it says other things that are permitted or not listed in other zones can be applied for and asked if the planning commission finds it to be harmonious and intent with the underlying zone. Okay, so sometimes we use that because it's my flexible hole that I can put things into and say, okay, well, let's just take it and see what the planning commission thinks.
But if they wouldn't have been asking for use as a recreation, I don't even know what the term they use, but
Event center.
an event center, there'd be no question. They wouldn't have had to even ask for conditional use.
Correct. If it was just a building on its own, that, we would look at it and say, okay,
Well, I mean,
based on the square foot, here's what you have to have.
yeah, but they would have had offices and all that kind of stuff.
Right,
I mean,
because they're
it's like-
doing dual things in it, and it's in so that's why I just felt like it was appropriate to bring it here. So it's just not staff making that decision, it's just so it's out there in the discussion to have that the planning commission reviewed this, because it's above and beyond the normal capacity is what it was. So under conditions, I felt like, well, then I'm fine with you having your event center, but let's take it to the planning commission under the shared parking, is what we talked about. Why? In other places, we wouldn't accept that. You guys passed one, you were on the commission when the hotel people came and were going to expand. Remember, and they went through and they did a whole analysis on, my hotel people are here between the hours of blank and blank, but my Starbucks people and the number, the sleep number place are here between these hours, and they're just the opposite. So we're asking for some shared stalls. It wasn't all of them, but a percentage, because their property was maxed out on parking. So they could ask for that, because even in my parking ordinance, it says alternative parking things can be brought before the planning commission under a conditional use permit. So I could have hit both those. It didn't matter for tonight's thing because in my parking ordinance, it still allows you guys to entertain alternate parking things for something to be possibly granted.
It's all one center, and all, that whole center has all their parking for,
Exactly.
basically all shared.
Right.
Now, if I knew if there wasn't restaurants in there right now, I probably wouldn't even, I would have just said, well, all your special events have to go. I would have just given them that. And then if they wanted to balk about it, I say, well, let's go before the planning commission then, But since I did have restaurants there and I'm, thinking I have 2 established businesses, I want this to go before a planning commission and we'll have 5 or 6 or 7 people all have a talk and a discussion on this.
Common area parking is a pain in the butt.
Yes, it is.
Especially when you have anything. But that's the nature of it.
No, I appreciate you.
discussion at
I
this
think
point.
your contribution to the training is critical. Yeah, it's either all full or it's all empty, right? On common area parking. Any other commentary about the standards and kind of the way that a conditional use is structured a little differently? Instead of saying we meet your code, they need to say we've satisfied that we are justified within the location we're asking for. 917.6, one exception to everything I've been telling you is any person, as you'll see there at the start, any person shall have the right to appeal to the city council. And so could that be Commissioner Schill? Yeah. Could it be Councilman so-and-so? Yes. Any person. Now, staff would narrow that to any resident of Washington City. We wouldn't expand it to, any person. We would keep it within the boundaries of the city's residents. But ultimately, the ordinance gives a broad right to appeal. I don't see many of these. But when it happens, essentially the appeal goes to the city council, and you'll see there's some timing there, but you'll see the last 3 lines. And the city council may affirm, reverse, or alter any action taken by the planning commission based on their review of the planning commission's decision and the application of the standards listed in the section 17.5, which is the section we just reviewed, right? And so the council would review and make a decision based on the same standards that we just studied together. Have you seen an appeal of a conditional use, Drew?
Didn't you sit on one? Remember the gun guys down?
Oh, yes. Oh, how did I forget about that one?
I
Wow.
don't know how you forgot about that.
That was a busy one. Yeah. And they never even built they put us through the gamut and then they never even built it. The kind of big metal building that
The Air Museum.
the furniture was the Air Museum. Now it's a furniture store. Yeah. And before that, it was permitted to be an indoor shooting range. And again, any person can appeal. The next door neighbor that had a shelter property for women and children appealed it and felt like that there was reasons why it would be not desirable or necessary to or contributing.
Can appeal and go to the city council instead of us?
Yes, if they get denied by you, they can appeal that denial to the city council.
Part of that any person. Yeah.
Yep. And so again, you don't see it often, but that right exists. 917.7, expansion of the conditional use. No structure or use allowed by the issuance of a conditional use permit may be expanded without the approval of the planning commission. And so the information, the plans and the drawings that come in are boundaries upon that approval. And if they want to go beyond that, they've got to come back. And when they come back, it'll be for an expansion of a conditional use is how it would be considered. 17.8, there's an inspection right.
Well, if I may, Dad, just real quick, I'm gonna let these guys know what I kind of do with that 17.7. There's oftentimes people think, well, I want to grow. I say, well, draw everything that you're going to do on your conditional use permit. Even if you're not going to build it now, you're already approved to expand to that, so that we don't have them come back in. It's all up front. You see the whole layout of what it's going to be, and they only build 75% of it. They're good to go on the other 25 when they're ready to do that expansion. Now, in a case, if you moved into a place that only had a conditional use permit and you wanted to add buildings, you got to go back and do
Right,
that
like when I
update.
added onto mine,
Yeah.
but we were already working in that area, so all
Yeah.
we did was.
But that's the difference between two. So I try to help people think ahead sometimes and just say, go ahead. If you're planning on doing this here, let's put it on your plan, get it approved now, and then you're good to go because that's part of your approved conditional use permit.
So subsection A that I just turned the page on, but at the top here, authorizes staff to go and inspect the property to make sure they're in compliance with the conditions that have been imposed. Subsection B there authorizes staff to withhold certificates of occupancy or business license if they haven't complied with the conditions of the conditional use. And so the council saw fit to allow some teeth in the regulatory portion of staffing, so that if they think that the conditions of the body of the commission haven't been complied with, that they can hold them up until they either are or until it's revoked. Interesting, in 17.9, there is a time limit. All conditional use permits shall expire within a maximum of 1 year approval unless there's been a substantial performance or the commission has granted an extension. And so sometimes we see plats come back after 18 months that expired because they just didn't get to work on them. Conditional use has a similar type of a sunset, but in this case, it's 1 year. And you know, the risk is if they let it get beyond 1 year, they've got to come and beg for an extension or mercy or some reason. And if the composition of the body changes, or if the perception of that use is changed, they run the risk of losing that vested right if they don't act upon it within 1 year. The last sentence there, and Commissioner Bullock, this speaks to some of your questions. A conditional use, this is in 17.9, a conditional use permit shall be non-transferable to a different location, but shall run with the land as long as the use is in continuous operation. And that's where your use was. Next sentence, if the use ceases operation for a continuous period of 1 year, the conditional use permit shall expire and the use shall not occupy the site unless a new conditional use permit is approved. And so if it expires, you have to come back for an all-new conditional use permit process.
Say there was a used car lot on a lot, they had the conditional use permit, then they left and that lot stayed vacant, or somebody came and did something else on it for the next 12 months, that car lot conditional use is no longer there. It's because it wasn't continued.
So they can't
And it lapsed.
pull one off, put another one on, and then go right back to, well, we did it 6 years ago, so now we're going to come back.
Right, they have to do it within that time. If one leaves, the clock starts ticking. You know, am I out there taking pictures with time? No, we pretty much know when people come and go, but I've never had to worry about that, just for your information, but that's kind of how that works. If they quit using it, 12 months, it's gone.
So this probably doesn't apply to Washington City, but I was talking to Hurricane this morning about some zoning for nightly rentals, individual single houses, you know, where they allow that and approve it, and it goes with the land, just like what we were talking about here. It's an entitled right for that particular house. So it distorts the value of that particular house from a market standpoint.
Does it have a time limit on it, though, if it's not used as a vacation rental?
Yeah, if it's not used as, but it has to, yeah, but I mean, you can sell it and still have it as a vacation rental. You know, so somebody buying the house would be stupid to not keep renewing their business license.
Yeah, so when you look at the standards, you know, most of them are, is this the right thing for this location? That's why it's not transferable. You can sell the land and people can acquire the entitlement that's vested with the land, but you can't get a conditional use permit for a use and then sell that use to somewhere else, like you would say an alcohol license or something like that. And then the last paragraph, revocation, talks about revocation and the process that the commission would go through. The two reasons is failing to comply with your conditions or ceasing to operate for a continuous period of 1 year of the conditional use. Both of those are grounds for revocation. With that, I've completed the topics I wanted to train on. Any other discussion or questions from the commission? So my office and the city staff, we'll keep track for you each the training that you've received. We'll give you an hour tonight, 30 of general and 30 for specific on planning on conditional use permits. And again, we'll just kind of chip these off as the year goes by, try to put them on meetings when we don't have a long agenda.
Do they have,
okay,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
A year ago, myself and Commissioner Staley and Commissioner Ivy and Matt, Lou, we went to a city training of some sort What was that?
Probably the
'Cause
League of Cities and Towns, which is,
that was the best training I've ever had in my life. I mean, as far as going to
you're going to
to
say that
something that's
after I
worthwhile.
just, after
No,
this
I'm saying
performance?
Wow.
it was completely interactive. So
no.
this one wasn't quite
They
so
train every
interactive.
day of their life. Mostly I just answer questions every day of
Yeah,
my life.
but
So yeah,
if so, do they do that
we
Yes,
plan
on a
to-
routine basis?
every year. We
Every
plan to
year.
incorporate that every year as one of your quarterly trainings.
Okay.
Now, of course, availability and scheduling is critical for you and
Yeah,
your lives.
they did
Headroom.
an
Yeah,
exceptional job.
But our plan is to not have me be the trainer every time for good reason. The league does it all the time. They're excellent at it. They have great presentations. They have great examples.
Is that always at a different city?
Usually they come to us in the winter or in the spring. And so if we can get it here, we'll try, but it's not always here.
Yeah, most of the time, actually, I don't know if they've held it, maybe once they have. All the time I've been here, they've held it in the city once. It was at the community center. But most time it's in Santa Clara or St. George,
Yeah. the
those
one-
two city halls.
Well, and the one I went to was actually at Dixie State. It was at the old
Oh, that's right.
East Elementary
The
building.
annex area over there, yeah.
One of the benefits of living in this area is the northern cities love to come down here for conferences.
They like to get out of the cold and come to the warm and do a conference. Yeah.
We also can request training, and they have staff that'll come on request. And so if there's topics that any of you want to be better informed on, we can set those up for you. The state level ones aren't going to spend as much time in your own ordinance like we did tonight. If you want training on our ordinances, that'll be Drew and I. If you want the bigger, broader training, we can get you the whatever resource you want. But the goal is to get you 4. One of those hours is by attending 12 meetings, which all of you comply with. 3 of those are by being in training. So you're now, halfway done. You got 2 hours this year just by tonight and attending your meetings.
I've seen on my email from the city, different training for like sexual harassment and things like that. Is that,
That's not the land use training. So you need 4 hours of land use training. And so you can,
okay. But
You're
the
supposed
other
to go-
deals that I'm
But you
just
can go
talking to you
online,
about, do I
the-
need to do that?
those are human
No.
resources related. For the
Right.
planning commission, we don't require it.
Okay.
No.
For you, we do.
But you can always go onto their website and count that as part of your training as well. You just say the date you did it and the log on time. We had all you guys, we gave you the website, I think, a year and a half ago. I think most of you,
We watched.
Jumped onto those?
When we got on, they wanted us to watch.
yeah. And those can be counted towards your training as well.
So we're tracking them internally for you. We're trying to calendar every quarter to have some form of training in some nature. And I hope it's helpful. I hope you hope to look into some of these things. Just helps you realize what you do and why you do it, and some of the kind of wrinkles and loopholes that are out there. Sue's, so usually they'll appeal. Yeah. So the court system has a rule which says you have to exhaust your administrative remedies before you can go to district court. So if an applicant comes to here and gets a denial, and they say, "Well, I'll sue you in court," and they go and sue, we would move to have it dismissed on the failure to exhaust administrative remedies, and the district court would dismiss their court case. If things worked out for us, their appeal period would have expired, and now they don't even have a right to appeal, so they just lose everything, right? That would be an applicant that hasn't sought good legal advice. It's not a hidden legal concept. Any good attorney will know that they need to exhaust administrative remedies. So they should first appeal according to the appeal process built into the ordinance. And if they go and get a denial there, then they get to go to the district court and say, "Look, we went to the commission, got denied, went to the council on appeal, got denied." The city code has no other appellate step that we must engage. So we're asking the district court to now fix the things that we think are wrong, and then they'd have to set out the reasons why they think it was wrong, right? Commissioner so-and-so said they don't like this for a reason that's not one of the standards in the code. Or the motion itself had language that was not within the standard of the code. Then a district court will essentially create a mini trial. They'll look at the record, the meeting record, the recordings. Both sides get to argue. The city would have attorneys and myself and any other attorneys that we decide are needed would argue on behalf of the decisions. And then a district court would decide, having heard both sides, what the correct choice should be. From there, either party can appeal it up the court the court appellate levels as well, if we want to. Those are really rare, thankfully. Usually the bigger the city gets, the more of those you get, because just land use becomes harder and harder the more urban and more just developed you are. You know, it's not that hard to develop rural areas because it's always going from open space or agriculture to some use, right? But once you've had a house that's now surrounded by skyscrapers, it just gets hard.
Can you turn your mic on?
We actually had one.
Your city up north?
Yeah, the city up north that I served on,
Yeah.
because it was a applicant who wanted an exception to the ordinance, and we denied it, and then the city council denied it as well.
How did it turn out at court?
I don't know. We all got served. We were all named on that.
If you want to give me the names, I'll go look it up and we can tell you how it turned out.
Okay.
The courts recognize a level of discretion in the legislative bodies. Where it gets hard is if the applicant says, look, they never got trained. So the reason why I'm tracking your training is so that if we do end up in court, they say, you know, were your commissioners trained? And we say, yeah, here's the last 5 years of training. And I think that a court's going to look at that and say, yeah, they received the requisite training, right? Also, by receiving the requisite training, you'll speak the language and you'll look at the right standards as you consider these things. And so there's kind of a twofold benefit there. Sometimes you lose in court. Sometimes courts just say, yeah, what you guys looked at just isn't supported by Utah law, and they overturn you. But there's a discretion offered to legislative bodies. And again, there's not a lot of law underneath. I'm a citizen that qualifies to be on the commission, and I feel like that's not the right fit for this area, right? That's a discretion that you're allowed to have, and if the court doesn't conclude that you've exceeded it grossly, the court will uphold you. Good training.
Yeah,
I will.
good training, and
I'll
I think
return to my
it's great
seat.
to even have you here with us to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Some of my friends like Dick and Lori Saunders ask me why I do this. Why? But I enjoy my job. I enjoy my job, and I like working with you.
We enjoy you here.
You today?
They're bet to see.
Okay, well, that completes our session of training. We appreciate that, and I look for a motion to end this meeting tonight, adjourn this meeting.
Is Commissioner Tupou, I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
This is Commissioner Bullock, I'll second.
I have a first and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.